Hi everyone, this is Jenny and I am back today with another video. So today I'm going to be doing part 2 of my April wrap-up. You should have seen part 1 yesterday. I will link it down below in case you missed it, as well as up in the cards. So today is going to be all the books that I read that were not related to the Owl's Magical Readathon, as well as what I'm currently reading. It's the 29th when I am filming this, and one of these books I'm pretty sure I will finish today or tomorrow that I'm currently reading. So that actually brings me to a total of 18 books read. I believe I said 16 in my video yesterday, but I miscounted. So today I'm going to talk about the 8 books that I finished in addition to the Owl's Readathon, as well as the 5 books that I am currently reading, because I'm a monster and I read 5 books at the same time. But actually the first 2 I'm going to talk about, or not talk about is really the better word, is my 2 of the BookTube prize books that I read this month, which I'm not allowed to talk about until the round is complete. I have been filming a BookTube prize vlog that will go up around like May 31st, June 1. I believe the round's officially over on the 30th of May. But the 2 books that I finished this month for the prize were Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo and Women Talking by Miriam Toews. But I'm not going to share any of my thoughts about those 2 here in this video. You'll have to see my BookTube prize vlog at the end of the month. But the next book I finished, I believe I finished it on like the 1st or 2nd of the month, and I talked about it in my March reading wrap up as a like currently reading book, but I finished it at the beginning of this month, and that was The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, Native America from 1890 to the Present by David Truer. This was published by Riverhead and was given to me as a gift this past Christmas by my little sister. And I absolutely love this. It was probably going to be one of my top books of 2020, perhaps of all time. This was just absolutely phenomenal, amazing nonfiction that, kind of as the subtitle suggests, is an examination of the history of Native people living in the continental United States since the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890 all the way until the present day. And this tracks all sorts of different history. It talks about the Indian schools, it talks about the creation of new reservations, it talks about Native people's involvement in the 2 world wars, as well as kind of more present day issues such as sovereignty, casinos, marijuana legalization, all sorts of like really, really fascinating stuff. American Indian movement in the 1970s was also a big like major section of this book, and it's just like really, really phenomenally well written. It's so well researched. I learned so much about this book. It is a very intense read, so you know, while it's obviously like really important history for any American to know, going in, like, just know that it really will remind you of just like how terrible and racist and awful like our government and white people in America in general have been to Native people and like people of color through all of time, including like up to today. So like if that is something that is challenging for you to read, you know, take caution, but like definitely do still read this book. And in addition to kind of the historical aspects of this book, Truer also uses his background as an anthropologist to also tie in ethnography in really interesting ways. So he, for each of the kind of more recent sections, talks to several different Native people kind of across America. So his focus is a lot in people of the Ojibwe Nation, which is the nation that he is part of, as well as kind of other indigenous people living in kind of North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. But he also travels to the Pacific Northwest and talks to some Native people there, as well as I believe the Southwest, but don't quote me on that, in kind of a very interesting examination of these Native people's lives as they kind of remember some of the events that he talks about in this book, which was just so well done. Yeah, I truly I don't even have that much to say about this book, except just like, please go read it. It's so good. 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. So the next book I finished, I also talked about in my March wrap up, and that is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first in a new series. I don't think we know how long the series is going to be. That is her first foray into new adult. I think really technically adult, I would say. That is an urban fantasy, maybe mystery. I'm not sure if the like mysterious elements will continue through the next books, but this one definitely had some mystery to it. And I've seen some mixed reviews of this one. I've seen people that are like, this is a top book of 2020, versus other people that were like really quite disappointed. And to quote Mara from Books Like Whoa, this really, I think, in order to fully enjoy Sarah J. Maas, you have to just give in to like the crazy sauce kind of element to her writing. She is you know, good at what she does, which is writing these like very intense, absurd fantasy romances. And that's really all you have to kind of let yourself believe that she's good at doing. You know, if you're expecting kind of more from that, I think sometimes you will like maybe be setting yourself up for the disappointment, because that's just like what she writes. So I really enjoy it. It's like very escapist for me, very like guilty pleasure reading. And this particular one follows Bryce Quinlan. She always has the most absurd names. Bryce Quinlan, as she begins to investigate a kind of mysterious killing that happened that she's like personally connected to in her city of Crescent City, alongside this like fallen angel hottie whose name is Hunt Apthar. And crazy stuff happens. The last 250 pages I truly read like one morning, and I just couldn't stop. I felt the way that you feel when you're like 8 years old and you're like reading Percy Jackson or whatever, and you just like cannot stop reading, which has not happened to me for maybe like 10 years. So that was actually like a really fun feeling to have. And so the ending, absolutely crazy, would like highly keep you on your toes. The beginning, as some people have said, and I would agree, is a bit slow, but Sarah J Maas like tends to do that, I find. I will say it was less like you know, steamy times heavy than I was expecting from adult Sarah J Maas, but I am assured that she will make up for that in the later books in the series. I don't know, I really enjoyed this. I think it was definitely like Sarah J Maas doing what she does best, and you have to kind of take that very niche of like her writing these characters. You know, she writes very similar stuff, but she does it really well. And so if you enjoy like her previous books and you're not expecting something completely new, I think you would enjoy this one quite a lot. I thought it was a phenomenal time, and I did give it 5 stars just because the crazy sauce was off the charts. The next book I read was Eat Joy, which is a collection of short essays edited by Natalie Eve Garrett, and this was given to me as a birthday gift from one of my really, really good friends, Bryn. If you're watching this, hi Brinny. And this, as I said, is these short essays by some pretty famous like novelists and essayists, but also some like lesser known people, and some like memory that they have associated with food. Oh, and this was published by Black Balloon Publishing, which I believe is a small indie press, I'm not entirely sure. And I've read in a review somewhere that someone was like, this is like you being a teacher and reading all of the submissions for an assignment that had a somewhat vague prompt, because it's interesting to see how differently people took this prompt of like writing a short essay and then having each chapter then also concludes with like a short recipe of the food that they talk about in their essay. And so it was interesting to see how divergent all of these essays were. Most of them were hits for me. I would say the ones that like absolutely stand out are Dessert by Colin McCann, which I'll link down below. It was originally published in the New Yorker, and it's just like such a phenomenal short essay that I would recommend anyone reading. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's, which is, I believe, called Sierra Leone 1997. Edgewood Danticant's A Grain of Comfort was also like heartbreaking and beautiful. And then the last essay, which is called The Bowdoin Trail by Natalie Bazile, was also one of my favorites. The other ones, there were some also misses in here for me. I remember Carmen Maria Machado's was not a favorite of mine, and a couple others. But in general, I like really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I would highly recommend if like food writing, cookbooks, you know, recipes, all of that are things that interest you. It's a really enjoyable little book, and it's like pretty short. It's less than 200 pages, and a pretty quick little read to get through. So would highly recommend that one as well. And then the next book I have is another one of the library books that have just been now sitting on my shelves for like 3 months. And that's An American Sunrise, poems by Jo Harjo. So Jo Harjo is, as it says, the Poet Laureate of the United States. She is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and this is a poetry collection that has kind of thematic elements of the Trail of Tears, as well as kind of Indian removal, the creation of reservations. So it was kind of a nice thematic read with The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, and I enjoyed these poems. I didn't like absolutely love them in terms of like how much they personally connected to me, but I think she's doing some really interesting stuff here. I think if I enjoyed poems a bit more or felt I understood them a bit more, I think I would have gotten even more out of this collection than I did. But, you know, if you like poetry, and you are kind of interested in kind of Indigenous poetry, talking about the Indigenous experience, I would recommend this. But it wasn't like a stand-away collection for me personally. So I gave it like 3.5 stars. Again, it was a relatively short read. It's an interesting kind of mix of forms as well. There's some like kind of historical nonfiction little prose elements in here, which I found cool as well. So yeah, an interesting poetry collection. I'm sure people that know more about poems probably enjoyed this even more than I did. And then I have 2 more books that I finished, and then we'll talk about the ones that I'm currently reading. The next of which is The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. This is published by Putnam, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. And this one was intriguing. So it's kind of a very divisive book, it sounds like, here on BookTube. I've seen a lot of people read it, and people either seem to give it like 5 stars or like 1 or 2 stars. I fell solidly in the middle. I gave it 3 stars. And it follows this set of siblings. There are 4 siblings living in New York City in the 1960s who go to a Romani woman, and the like Roma like gypsy thing is something that other people have talked about that is somewhat problematic. But anyway, they go to this woman, and she predicts the days that each of them are going to die. And then since after that point, the book is split into 4 sections that follows each of the siblings around the time they're said they're going to die. And I had a lot of similar feelings that I think other people did. I thought the premise was really interesting. However, I think the themes, especially in the second half, were like pretty heavy-handed, to the point that I was like rolling my eyes a little bit at like how obvious this is. And additionally, and this is not something I've seen a lot of other people talk about, but I'm kind of confused as to whether you're supposed to like the siblings, because I didn't really. I thought they were pretty self-interested, self-serving, not very caring people to themselves or to each other. And some of that I think is attributed to the lack of like treatment and acknowledgement of some of their like mental health and stuff. Obviously, don't have to be like perfectly amazing people, but I think especially Daniel just like irked me to no end. I found it really interesting that obviously the characters, if you like the 4 siblings, the read is going to be a lot more emotionally impactful, because obviously, you know, there's, you know, death is like going to happen in this book. But if you don't like the siblings, then I think a lot of the commentary that's being made by side characters in like direct opposition, and in this I'm like in largely speaking like specifically about Raj in Daniel's section. I think a lot of the things he says are like the most poignant aspects, and this happens in Varya's section as well. A lot of the things he says are the most like poignant points of the novel, but they're being said in direct opposition to like Daniel and Varya's like points of view. So I found it very interesting that these like characters who are saying these things that directly oppose what the like main character is thinking and saying are the ones that are like carrying the thematic elements. I don't know. I was confused. If you've read this book, please tell me if you like the characters or not, or if you're supposed to like the characters, because it really confused me as to whether I was supposed to like them or not. Additionally, I also, so at the end of Daniel's section, I was like, I can't stand this book. But then Varya's section did redeem it quite a bit for me, and I think I've heard that from other people too. Varya's section helped to tie together a lot of the themes that were like bugging me in previous sections. Additionally, I think Simon and Clara, the like first 2 siblings, are also interesting, but they're just like, I kind of wanted a bit more from them. All in all, like, this was fine. I'm glad that I have it off my shelves. I'm debating whether or not I like will keep it around, because this cover like speaks to me on a deeply personal level, but I don't usually keep books that I don't care about that much, and this definitely falls in that category. So once the coronavirus is over, I will let you know if I keep this one or not. But 3 stars, it was fine. Read it if it sounds interesting to you, but it was fine, I guess. And then the last book is another ebook, and that was The Governor's Affair by Courtney Milan. This is a short prequel novella to her brother's sinister romance series. So this is a historical Regency romance that follows these 4 boys who all, I believe, go to Eton. The one that Prince William went to. You know which one I'm talking about. So these 4 boys, I believe, are all attending school together at Eton, and then their romances are like the next 4 books in the series. So this follows one of the parents of one of the boys. I'm not going to say anything more than that about their parentage, but it was really cute. It's like, I think perfectly does what a romance novella should do, especially a prequel novella, and that it like got me excited to read the rest of the books in the series. The romance was like cute, but it wasn't, you know, overdeveloped to the point that it felt rushed or anything. like, it was kind of very, like, flat in terms of its, like, character plot development. But I think that's what's necessary to, like, make a romance novella successful. I really enjoyed it. I'm intrigued to continue on with the series. I think Courtney Milan seems like a pretty, like, smart historical romance writer, which is what I'm always looking for. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It was fun. I'll keep reading. And that's it for the books that I've finished during the month of April. And now I'm going to talk briefly about the ones that I am currently reading. So the one that I'm furthest along in is 3 Women by Lisa Taddeo. This was published by Avid Reader Press. And I'm about like 70% of the way through, so I should finish this either today or tomorrow before the month of April is over. And I'm really enjoying this one. It, I think, has gotten some pretty divisive reviews. I've seen people who I really admire on BookTube giving it like 5 stars, saying like this is such an important book, and then other people giving it like 1 star and saying it's like so gratuitous, just like absolutely unnecessary, not what it is marketed to be. And I can definitely see both sides of that argument. I think I am leaning more towards the like 4 or 5 star range, but simply because I am reading this more as a piece of like narrative journalism that is an in-depth exploration of these 3 women's lives, as opposed to like this feminist manifesto about like uncovering women's desires, which I think is kind of what the marketing of the book portrayed it to be, and it's definitely not that. Instead, I think it is much more this examination of these 3 women and kind of how men have manipulated them, basically like how power dynamics play out during a relationship, especially with men in positions of power, kind of externally from the relationship itself. Hi everyone, this is Editing Jenny here, coming at you from outside my house. Oh my god, it's so windy, sorry if you can hear that. Coming to you outside my house because I'm editing in my living room and my dad is napping on the couch, so I didn't want to disturb him. But I wanted to clarify a couple things about my thoughts about 3 Women after like watching back the footage, and also mention that I did finish it yesterday, which was the 30th of April, so that was the 18th book that I finished. And I did end up giving it 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it is a really, as I said in like the previous clip, I think it's a really interesting piece of like in-depth narrative journalism in terms of examining these 3 otherwise pretty ordinary white women living in America. I do think that the like racial critiques in terms of its lack of racial diversity and kind of sexuality diversity are important to note. And I think that those were somewhat partially intentional on Taddeo's part, in terms of wanting to speak a bit more about her experience and kind of experiences of women similar to her. Additionally, I think, and I mentioned this all in my Goodreads review, which I always link my Goodreads down below, so be sure to check that out for like my most recent reads and thoughts about them. I do think this book suffered a lot from its marketing, in terms of it being marketed as this book about women's desires and kind of an unveiling of those desires, like particularly sexual desires, when I just really don't think that's true at all. I think it is much more an examination of these 3 women who are just like trying to find a man in this world who like will genuinely care for them and love them, kind of for who they are, and help them to work through like previous traumas, all of 3 of the women do not get to do that over the course of the novel, and I think that also speaks to a lot of kind of women in America who are like dealing with, you know, past traumas and trying to find solace in men who are actually just really making that worse. So I think that was like a really interesting examination for that reason, of this like kind of cycle of trauma in relationships. And so for that reason, I really, really enjoyed it. But I don't think desire was the right word at all, because it's much more a focus on like the manipulation of men against women, violence, whether that be like physical or emotional violence of men against women, and basically like how power dynamics can play a role in basically those relationships, and how that's really important to note. So I wanted to say all of that, but yeah, gave it 4 stars, really enjoyed it. Now I'm going to talk about some like Catholicism ideas I have, so enjoy that. I am curious. I don't think, two of them are like for sure Catholic, and Lisa Tadeo I think is Catholic. I don't know. I'm intrigued by the like themes of Catholicism and like desire and guilt and sexuality as like a kind of triangle of thematic interest. But I don't know for sure because I don't know if one of the women is Catholic or if Lisa Tadeo is Catholic. So if you have that information, please let me know because I'd be very intrigued to know if that's like an added kind of theme of this is like Catholicism. So yeah, but really enjoying this one. We'll probably give it 4 stars. I will be sure, as always, to link my Goodreads down in the description below if you want to follow me or add me as a friend, and then you can know what I think about this book when I finish it. The next book I'm reading, in an attempt, as I said in my last video, to read through some of my Book of the Month backlist, is Recursion by Blake Crouch. I read Dark Matter, which is his previous novel. He actually has written like other novels before this, but Dark Matter was his like breakout work. I read that back in like 2016 when I was a lot more into mystery thrillers than I am now. And so I think this one is like a fine read. I'm enjoying it like for what it is, but it's not necessarily a genre that I regularly pick up. However, it was long, or I guess shortlisted for Book of the Month's like Book of the Year award that they do. And if you've been subscribed long enough, then you got like one of those books for free in January. So that's how I got this book, and I just have been like meaning to read it. So I finally picked it up. I'm about like 20% of the way through this one, but it's moving quite fast, and it follows the story of basically this woman who's kind of working on like memory research that's like getting more and more sketchy, and then this police officer in New York City who's like dealing with these people that say they have this thing called false memory syndrome, wherein they believe they have this whole like other life that they've lived that doesn't seem to be accurate in terms of like reality. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I definitely think there's gonna be some interesting like conversation in here. I really liked Dark Matter in that it's like a thriller, mystery thriller that explores like technology and like the potential issues with technology, and I think this one will do similar stuff. So yeah, enjoying that one. And then I am also currently reading 2 BookTube prize books, the first of which is The Innocents by Michael Crummy, which I won't talk about, and the other is Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellman, which I also won't talk about. I believe I might finish this one right around the time the month is over though, which will be exciting. And then the last book that I'm reading is Exciting Times by Nisha Dolan, I think is how you say her name. Irish names, they amaze me by how those letters can then produce like a name. So this is a literary fiction debut published by Echo, which, as I said, one of my fave publishers, and they were actually doing a promotion on NetGalley where if you requested it over the weekend, you got automatically approved for it. So that actually sent me down a NetGalley rabbit hole that I'm going to talk about more in my next video. I'm going to do like a vlog style review, I think, of some of the books that I have just been approved for. But this one follows a girl named Ava who has just graduated from university in Ireland and has since moved to Hong Kong to become a teacher and just kind of figure out what she's doing with her life. And she, I believe, has 2 kind of romantic entanglements there. The blurb says that it's like Crazy Rich Asians meets Sally Rooney. I haven't quite gotten to the Crazy Rich Asians part, except the like first love interest she has is this like wealthier man. But I'm intrigued to see what the Crazy Rich Asians part is. But it definitely feels kind of Sally Rooney-esque in its writing and its like wittiness. I read Normal People last year, and it was like one of my absolute favorite books of all time. And I don't think Exciting Times has quite as much of the like very quiet observations of the life around you that you read and you're just like, yes, this is like the most accurate thing, and I never even thought about it that way. That's how I feel when reading Sally Rooney, and Dolan does a little bit of that, but not kind of to the extent that Sally Rooney does it. But I'm still really enjoying this one. It's very witty, realizing that like young Irish women writers may just be like my new like subgenre of favorite things. So if you have any more young female Irish writers, like leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to check them out. I'm enjoying this one. I'm about 20% of the way through that one as well, and should be finishing it up pretty soon in that video that I was just talking about. That is all of the second half of my April wrap-up, plus my currently reading. What have you read this April? I would love to know down in the comment section below. Additionally, please subscribe if you want to see more videos from my channel. Thank you so much to everyone who's already subscribed. I've been loving having interactions with all of you in the comment sections of my videos. I think that's it for me today. I'll see you next time.